My name is Renee Forsyth. I'm the Director of Professional Development for Lyme Connect. And to provide a visual description, I am a white female with shoulder-length brown hair. I am sitting in front of a Lyme branded green background, and I'm wearing a light purple top today. And we're thrilled that so many of you could join us to learn more about creating a culture that is inclusive of people with disabilities. And over the next few minutes, we'll take this opportunity to learn from the experiences of people with disabilities. You'll see throughout the presentation that we weave in even quotes, full quotes from our network members. So you're hearing directly from the people who are living with these disabilities. We'll take this opportunity, and we're so glad that you joined us, to increase your awareness about disability and how it may be impacting your colleagues, current and prospective employees. We'll talk about how you can create a culture of trust, which is critical to supporting members of your team in whatever role you're joining us from. Excuse me, we'll ultimately talk about how you can cultivate talented teams of diverse individuals with unique strengths, skills, and perspectives. And we'll explore how Lyme Connect can support you and your company in all of these efforts. So let's start there. Some of you may not be familiar with Lyme Connect. We are a not-for-profit organization, and our mission is to rebrand disability through achievement. We do that by attracting high potential professionals and university students, including veterans, with all different types of disabilities into the Lyme Network. There is no fee to join the Lyme Network. If you're joining us as a person with a disability, we encourage you to join as a network member in addition to a corporate partner. Once individuals join our network, we work to prepare our network members with the essential tools and the confidence that helps them achieve their goals. We also connect our network members for scholarships, different leadership programs, internships, and full-time careers with the world's leading corporations. All of you are corporate partners. If you're joining us, that means you are at one of our corporate partner companies. Part of the Lyme partnership with all of you is that we support you in recruiting, onboarding, developing, retaining, and promoting all employees who have disabilities. Together with our corporate partners and with our network members, we are celebrating the strengths and talents of people with disabilities. That is the current NDEAM theme for this year, the Disability Employment Awareness Month theme. But it is also a theme that we celebrate all year round and every year at Lyme Connect. And just to highlight all of the amazing partners that are part of our Lyme community, in North America, across North America, our partners are Johnson & Johnson, PwC, and Salesforce. In the US, we have Bloomberg, Citi, EY, Goldman Sachs, Google, NFL, Sony, and Unilever. And in Canada, we have Bell, CIBC, Canada Life, Deloitte, IBM, OMERS, Rogers, and TD. So if you're joining us from one of those companies, welcome. Over the next few minutes, or the next half hour or so, I'd like to explore some perceptions about people with disabilities. So we are thrilled that all of you signed up for this webinar today, and I'd ask you to just reflect on what's your own awareness around people with disabilities, what you're trying to learn from this webinar, and hopefully some of the things that we'll cover will address some of those issues. So some perceptions, some people might believe that they already know if a member of their team or a colleague has a disability. Other people might be joining because they are concerned that they will offend someone with what they say or do when they're interacting with people with disabilities. Some people might be curious about how people with different disabilities will be able to do certain tasks or be effective in certain jobs. Some people might have the perception that giving people certain accommodations will give them an unfair advantage, perhaps in the recruiting process or on the job. Or maybe you're just trying to understand what you can do to further your disability efforts within your company. So for whatever reason you're joining us, we're thrilled that you're here with us today. So let's start with that first perception. I know if a member of my team or colleague has a disability. It's really helpful to set the stage of what the disability landscape looks like. Whether you're joining us from the US or in Canada, disability is broadly defined as a physical or mental condition that substantially limits one or more major life activities. And based on that definition, we know that approximately 61 million US adults live with a disability and 8 million adults in Canada have a disability. So equating to approximately 1 in 4 North Americans. To further understand disability, we can look at the way it might impact the individual. So it might impact their ability to learn, or it might impact their ability to pay attention. It might impact them in an intellectual way. It also might impact their memory. It might impact them from a mental health perspective. And a mental health conditions are a broad umbrella of different disabilities, and that includes anxiety and depression. It might impact their ability to communicate. Certainly, physical disabilities might be something that comes to mind if you think of someone in a wheelchair or who is an amputee, for example. But physical disabilities could also include chronic health conditions that impact someone physically that may not be evident upon meeting them. Sensory disabilities are also often thought of when you think of the word disability in terms of being blind or deaf. That can also be a spectrum in terms of being low vision or hard of hearing, or perhaps an individual has difficulty forming social relationships. And it's not just the way the disability impacts the individual, but it's when they meet with a barrier in society that they're not fully and equally able to participate. So think about that in your role, whatever you do, and how you can remove some of these barriers for people with disabilities. Is your technology fully accessible? Is your physical space accessible for people with different disabilities? What is your policy around asking for and granting accommodations, and how does that actually get put into practice? What assumptions do you bring into the workplace around people with disabilities? And I welcome you all with a judgment-free zone. This is a place to learn, but we all do live with assumptions, so it's good to recognize that. What language and action can you take to make sure that you create an inclusive culture for all employees, regardless of disability status? And to further define disability, we also know that at least 1 in 5 students on university campuses has a disability. We're starting to see that number even increase more. We did some research a few years ago regarding disability and the white collar corporate workforce, and that research resulted in this pretty amazing number that almost 1 in 3 white collar corporate employees has a disability. So about 1/3 of your colleagues might be living with a disability, and you might be thinking, well, that doesn't seem accurate because I look around and it doesn't seem that anybody around me has a disability. Well, we also know that approximately 2/3 of all disabilities are not visible if you're just meeting someone and they choose not to share that disability with you. The largely non-visible disabilities can include learning and attention disabilities, medical conditions, mental health conditions, and more. And so I think it's important to understand, why would your colleagues or your team members choose not to disclose their disability? And these are some of the top reasons that we hear from our network members about why they choose not to disclose. One reason is the belief that people will judge them before they know them or know what they're capable of, making assumptions again. They might fear negative reactions or perceptions from the people that they might disclose to. Perhaps they've had negative experiences in the past, and that's going to impact future decisions to talk about their disability, especially in the workplace. Because this is a top reason that we hear, people are concerned that it will impact their career, their potential for new assignments, or maybe in the recruiting process that it will hold them back from actually getting an offer. Or maybe they don't know how to have the conversation in the workplace. It can be very uncomfortable to share something like that and not know how people around you might react. So that sets a little bit of the stage for what the disability landscape might look like. Perhaps you're joining because you're concerned that you will offend a person with a disability with what you say or do. And that's always a good thing to address in these sessions because it can be uncomfortable for people if they don't know how to interact. And we do know that language is important, but we don't have a blanket answer for how people would choose to be referred to. So we have a picture of 12 of our network members, and it's likely that their preference for how they refer to their disability might be as different as the 12 of them. So there's two real main thoughts here on just using the word disability in general. Some people prefer person first language or being referred to as a person with a disability. And indicating that that's just one aspect of who they are. Other people say, no, I'm disabled. It is a core part of my identity, and it is not a bad word, so don't be afraid to use the word disabled. You may not know an individual's preference, so at Lyme, we use them interchangeably until we know what the person's preference is. But there is language you want to avoid using, such as some dated language, such as handicapped or crippled, or indicating that someone is a victim of their disability or saying that they're suffering from a disability. There's different euphemisms and different language that we don't generally use in a professional setting, such as special needs or differently abled, unless that's something that the person uses for themselves. And then you also want to be aware of unintended offensive language. So any reference to a disability when you don't live with that disability can be really offensive to people who might be around you with a disability. So some examples might be, oh, I'm getting very organized right now. I'm really focused on getting my desk organized and my OCD is really acting up. Or I was so stressed out and I almost had a panic attack. So really, when you tune into it, you'll realize how often people and the media and everything might reference a disability. And that doesn't create a safe culture or an inclusive culture for people who are around who might be living with disabilities. In terms of engaging people with disabilities, I mean, it's really going to depend on the individual's disability, but we don't have time to go into all of those. But I think the first step is to really just check your assumptions that they need your help. They may not need your help. An example is someone who might be blind and using a cane, and it may appear that they are bumping into things in the room. And in essence, what they might be doing is actually mapping the room, and that's how they can identify where everything is in the room. So you can certainly ask if assistance is needed, but don't assume and just start doing things for individuals with different disabilities. If someone has someone that's working with them, for example, an ASL interpreter, you still want to focus on the individual themselves, direct your comments to that individual. Don't turn your attention to the ASL interpreter. You really want to focus on the individual. The same thing if they are working with a support animal. Those are working animals. They're not to be pet or played with. As much as possible, ensure accessibility at any event or any meeting or anything that you host, and then just generally interact with the employee as you would with other employees. Attempt to meet their needs, but you don't have to change overall the way you interact with them. So you might be curious about how people with disabilities will be able to do certain tasks or certain jobs. And this is where we can recognize the role that assumptions play in our life and in the way we interact with people in the world. I love this image because it says here, limiting beliefs do not equal facts. So just because I may or you may see someone who has a certain disability and you really wonder how would it be possible for them to do A, B, C, D, that doesn't make it accurate. And so you really want to make sure that you don't bring those assumptions into the workplace as much as possible. This individual in our network said, sometimes with disabilities, the bar is set very low. Even just going to college can be seen as this great success, but that doesn't set a path for reaching a really high level of potential. And we have seen the incredible potential that our network members have. We see it in action every day. And when we surveyed them not that long ago, we said, how has your disability impacted you? And they came back with these stories of these incredible strengths and skills that they developed as a result of living with their disability, not despite living with their disability. And they're able to put those into action in a university setting, in the workplace, in ways that's really doing amazing things. So just to highlight a few of them, these are just some examples. Obviously, every individual is going to have their own strengths and skills. But again, it gets back to not making an assumption that they can't do certain skills or they don't have certain strengths. They may be an incredible problem solver because they always had to navigate a world that was inaccessible for them. Maybe they took on a leadership role either in their own care or on campus or in creating an ERG or in advocating for the needs of people with disabilities. They might be incredibly organized because they never know when they have to deliver ahead of time if their symptoms are going to flare up. And resilience and determination are words that we heard over and over again. And I think those are pretty amazing strengths to have in a colleague or a member of your team. And they all, some individuals shared really specialized skills that they relate to living with their disability. Some people mentioned being able to see patterns that they realize their peers can't see, or organizing in really efficient ways and creating systems that made their organization's operations more efficient and effective. Maybe they learn differently, so they ask the right questions or they approach problems in a creative way because that's how they've always learned. And we've heard of managers who have a unique empathy because they live with their own disability and they realize that people have individualized needs in the workplace. And technology and accessibility, I've been at Lyme 10 years and I am amazed every day at the impact our network members are able to have in this space around accessibility and also the advancements in technology. And I think regardless of what you are joining us, what service, product, business you work on, having accessible technology and businesses is really critical to people around the world. We also know that people with disabilities drive success. A study showed that companies who are working successfully towards disability inclusion realized a positive impact on their business. So they saw 28% higher revenue. They saw gains of double in their net income, 30% higher profit margins, and advances in innovation. So all of that to say that people with disabilities are critical to your business. And just bringing in that diverse perspective helps your entire team understand different audiences even better. So there was a study that showed that if you have a member of your target audience on your team, the entire team is 144% more likely to understand that target audience. And that's important because this community of people with disabilities globally and the people who care about them, that their buying power equals $13 trillion. And we know that disability, either directly or indirectly through loved ones, touches 73% of consumers. So it's an important market to understand. Perhaps you believe that accommodations give people an unfair advantage. So I just want to walk through that. And some of you may be familiar with this image, but I will describe it here. We have 3 images on this screen, and it's 3 people looking at a soccer game, and one person is tall, one person's a medium height, and one is short. In the first image, which they are all being treated equally, they're all standing on a box trying to see over the fence to watch the game. The tall and medium height person can see, but the shorter person cannot see. So they're all being treated equally in this situation. In the second image, the taller person gave the shorter person his box or their box, and now that shorter person can see over the fence, where it initially with just one box, they could not see over the fence. So that could be seen as maybe accommodation of sorts. They have 2 boxes versus the other person having 1 and none. But now they can all equitably see over the fence and watch the game. The ideal situation is to create with accessibility in mind from the beginning. So if you have a fence that is see-through, it doesn't matter what height you are, everybody can see the game. So just keeping that in mind in terms of the idea around accommodations, they really provide access and they create a level playing field for all people to equally participate. These are some examples of accommodations that have been really successful. Directly hearing again from our network members, this person said, my conversation resulted in getting the technology I need. I'm able to do my job better and faster. And these images, the one person is writing with a pen. That's a smart pen that maybe he was able to record the meeting so he could actively participate, and now he can go back and transcribe his notes. Another person is wearing noise canceling headphones. Sometimes the office can be really busy and distracting for individuals. So this may be one way for that person to be able to focus. And another person is using a screen reader. So there's lots of technological options that allow people to do their best work. There's also some more nuanced accommodations that can help people be successful. This person said, now my manager has explicitly given me a code word to use whenever I'm having a bad day. The image of this woman, maybe she has a migraine or she has a chronic health condition, but it's about, maybe just a little extra support that day and not having to go into great detail about why you need a certain accommodation in that moment. It's just a relationship with your manager. And I love this quote, which this person said, when I needed a flexible schedule for physical therapy, it could also be mental health therapy or some other appointment, I experienced empathy and understanding, which helped me reframe my view of disability. And I realized that everyone, regardless of disability status, has their own needs in the workplace. And so when you think about accommodations like that, they really aren't an unfair advantage. It's just another way to provide individuals with the support that they need to be their best self in the workplace. And we also know that accommodations are really not that much of a burden on most companies. 59% of accommodations cost nothing to provide. If they do cost anything, they are often less than $500. And again, we know that people and companies and managers accommodate others for a variety of reasons, including family commitments and other considerations. So we're wrapping up to the end, and I will stay on for questions if anybody has any, but what else can I do to create a culture that is inclusive of people with disabilities? And just recognize it's an ongoing process and continue to show up like you did today and continue to grow. We'll talk about how you can raise awareness, show appreciation, and take action. So first off, in raising awareness, hopefully you've taken something away from this webinar, and I encourage you to go back and share what you've learned, even just to mention that you have a partnership with Lyme Connect, to share that with other team members. It really highlights for people around you that you are tuned into the needs of people with disabilities. Continue to increase your awareness around disability. There's lots of ways to do that. And at Lyme Connect, we are always having different events. And as a Lyme corporate partner employee, you are open to joining us for those events. So I grow all the time and learn new things. So it's a continual process. Go back and learn about your company's accommodation policies and practices if you're not familiar with it already, especially if you're in a managerial role. In case someone does disclose to you, requests an accommodation, it's good to understand what that practice is internally. And encourage supportive disability language and actions. We talked about some of the things that happen, and it's not always intentional that people are being malicious about disability and they think they're joking. But if you sort of like see something, say something, to make sure that you're creating a culture that feels safe for people to talk about their disability. I know my colleagues shared how you can join the Lyme corporate partner community. That I encourage you to do that. You'll be able to access a recording once it's in there. There's also a site called askjan.org. It's a US government site. And it has a lot of great resources, but it also has an A to Z of disabilities. So if you are aware of someone who has a disability and you want to educate yourself rather than rely on them to educate you, you can go there, and we usually find that disability and learn a little bit more about it for yourself. Demonstrate appreciation. Recognize the value that people with disabilities bring to the workplace and really highlight and help your peers with or your coworkers with disabilities bring the best out of them. A great way to do this is support the efforts of your disability ERG. You can, if you're not a person with a disability yourself, attend as an ally and really support their efforts. And if you're in a role where you can do this, ask employees what they need to be successful in their role. If you're a manager, you can certainly, you're in a role to do that. But any other way you can support people, people learn differently, they work differently. This can be a great door opener. As this network member said, having an employee resource group for employees with disabilities and having events and trainings around disability is especially affirming and signals an inclusive culture. So go back and share about Lyme Connect and that we have all of these trainings coming up that people can join. And finally, take action. Whatever your role is, explore how you can contribute to building inclusion into your role. Make sure you're using accessibility features for every meeting. There's a lot of great tools that have just in the past 5 years, the advancements, the live captions, the meeting summaries, they just benefit everyone. So try to build accessibility and inclusion into everything that you do. If you're in that role, be part of the accommodations discussions. If someone discloses to you and you have the power, make sure that that is moving along, that you're not just like, go see HR or go see accommodations and wipe your hands of it. And again, just ensure accessibility for interviews, meetings, and events. And as this person said, it feels very supportive when accommodations aren't an afterthought and when materials are designed with accessibility in mind. So if we get back to that image of the people at the fence, try to design for accessibility from the get-go. It just really is such a positive, makes for a much more positive experience for everyone, but certainly for your colleagues with disabilities. With that, I am Renee Forsyth. I'm the Director of Professional Development. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or additional thoughts. If you're joining us from the US, Jennifer Grosso is your liaison with your company. If you'd like to get more involved with the work we do or attend as an interviewer at a networking event in the US, reach out to Jen. Karen is the partner liaison in Canada, and you can reach out to her if you'd like to get involved. So with that, I will stop sharing and see if there are any questions I can answer. Just gonna give me a minute, please. So feel free to use the chat if you have any questions, or you can use the Q&A feature as well. I don't see any questions coming in, but I'll just wait another moment. Okay, it doesn't look like there are any questions, and I finished at 1 o'clock on the dot. So thank you again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you at a future session. We have a session for managers next week, so reach out to us if you're interested in that, and we can get you the registration information. Thanks so much.